My birthday's this Saturday, so I wanted to do something a little bit different than what I normally do on this channel. And that's why I'm analyzing 9 popular books' opening lines. Let's get started. Hey guys, Nour here, and welcome back to my channel. For those visiting for the first time, hello! I'm the fantasy author of the novel Divinity Falling. And if you haven't yet, be sure to subscribe to my channel for awesome writing advice videos that will help you take your story to the next level. Like I said earlier, my birthday's this Saturday, so I decided to make this video a little bit more fun than usual, a little bit more lighthearted, just as a way to celebrate with you and have fun. Which is why I'm going to analyze some popular books' opening lines. I'm just going to choose some random books from my bookshelf that I think are currently popular or have been popular throughout the decades, and then just read the opening lines and give my feedback. This is completely subjective. Just because I like a certain line or don't like a certain opening line doesn't mean it's actually good or bad. This is completely my opinion, but I thought this would be super fun to do with you guys. I've actually wanted to analyze the opening lines of some popular books for about a year now, but I didn't know when would be a good time to actually get this done. Since my birthday is this week, I thought this would be the perfect video to do right about now. Because I don't know about you, but I find reading opening lines to be super fun. I get to learn something about other authors' writing style through those opening lines. Plus, if I'm being honest, certain books have really boring opening lines, in my opinion. Especially some classic books that I actually love, but I still feel like their opening lines are boring. So again, I'm just kind of interested to go through some books and analyze them and see if you agree with me or disagree. Again, this is all subjective. So let's get started. The first book I chose from my bookshelf is The Invisible Life of Addie by V.E. Schwab. Here's the opening line. The girl wakes up in someone else's bed. Okay, that's kind of, I think that's intriguing. It's been like a year or two since I read this book. I think that line is pretty intriguing. It makes you wonder, first, who's this girl? Second, why is she in someone else's bed? And also just what's going on? Is this something bad? Is this a good thing? Did she party too hard or was she kidnapped? It does a good job of hooking you. So, good job. Next, I want to do Scythe by Shusterman, because this is one of my favorite books. My friend gifted me this trilogy and I am so glad, because it is up there in terms of like beautiful books that hook you immediately. I don't remember what the first line was. The scythe arrived late on a cold November afternoon. Opening line by itself is a little bit out of context. So I think what I really liked wasn't necessarily the opening line, but maybe the opening page, which can happen sometimes. Certain books don't hook you immediately, and that's okay. It's better if they hook you immediately from the first line, but certain books can kind of get away with it as long as, you know, within the first paragraph or first page, they really hook you. And I remember this one did that. So it's interesting reading back the first line and going, oh, I mean, I don't think that's like by itself good enough. Based on knowing that the rest of the page hooked me, I'll accept it. But still, highly recommend this book. All right, the third book I've chosen is Defy the Night by Bridget Kemmerer. I think that's how you say her name. This one I read earlier this year, and it has quickly become one of my favorites. I think the book is like beautifully written in a way that it's full of politics, but it's not so exhausting. Like, even if you're not into politics, it's easy to digest. You don't need to learn a lot to kind of grasp what's going on. I just love it. There's so much intrigue. There's so much mystery and just excitement and adventure. I love this book. Plus, there are so many amazing plot twists. So let's see if the opening line is still as good as I remember. All right, off the bat, I want to say the opening line by itself is good, but I kind of like the first few lines. I will read the opening line by itself and then I will read the first few lines together so you can see what I mean. The hardest part of this job isn't the stealing. So off the bat, I'm already excited. Why is this person stealing? And why is that not the hardest part, right? You're intrigued immediately. But now let me read the first few lines together because I think it's even better than just the first line by itself. The hardest part of this job isn't the stealing, it's the escaping. At best, it takes me 2 minutes to scale the wall out of the royal sector, but the night is cold and my fingers are starting to go numb. So, like I said, the first line is already intriguing, but the first few lines kind of make you go, okay, she's in the royal sector, clearly this is a rich area, you know, this is where there's probably a king or a prince or princesses or whatever, and for some reason she is scaling a wall, which is dangerous. So why is she doing it? And why is she doing it in the cold? So there's a lot of setting. You could kind of picture everything going on. It's just so vivid right off the bat. There's clearly an adventure right from the start. And that's something I really love about this book. It sets the tone, the setting, everything. Highly recommend this book. All right, so it's been a while since I read this. It is Nour by Alexandra Bracken. To be honest, I don't think I ever finished this book. I don't know why I never finished it. I still intend on finishing it. And honestly, I got pretty far into it. I might have like 4 chapters to go to finish it. So I need to get back into it and actually finish it, find out what happens. But let's see if I liked the opening line. Her mother had once told her that the only way to truly know someone was to fight them. Okay, that's pretty intriguing. You're wondering like why do you have to fight, like wrestle with somebody to get to know them? But yeah, that's interesting. I don't know if this is my favorite book out there. If it was, I would have finished it. As an opening line, it is intriguing. I know there were definitely parts in this book that interested me. But yeah, I did like that opening line, and I did find the rest of the book interesting in certain spots. Now, this one's on my shelf, but I actually haven't read it yet. I still plan on reading it. It's The Atlas 6 by Olivia Blake. I think that's how you say her name. I thought the premise was really interesting. The book cover is pretty cool. Let's find out how I feel about the opening line. The day Libby Rhodes met Nicolas Ferrer de Verona was coincidentally also the day she discovered that incensed, a word she had previously had no use for, was now the only conceivable way to describe the sensation of being near him. Based on just this, I'm slightly intrigued, but not because it tells me much about the story. So for example, Defy the Night just kind of sets the setting immediately in those first few lines. It sets the tone of adventure. I don't think this one does that, but it does create this romantic atmosphere. So I like romance. I like romance in any book I read. So just based on that, I'm intrigued, but I know this book has adventures, or at least action. So this first line doesn't give me that, but I am intrigued. Would I read this? Absolutely. Based on that line, I'm hooked. All right, next we have The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. And I read this maybe 2 years ago. I usually read more fantasy, more action adventures, that kind of thing. So this was a little bit different than what I normally read, but I really enjoyed it. All right, going to chapter 1. Can you come into my office? Okay, first lines being dialogue. I don't usually like, and actually a lot of agents usually don't like dialogues being your opening lines because it just feels so random. You don't know what's going on. You don't know who's talking, where they're at, what the context is. You're almost eavesdropping on this random person and you can't even see them, right? You don't know where they're at. It's not very personal. It doesn't set the scene. It doesn't set the tone. It doesn't tell you much about the story, but that doesn't mean that you can't use it every now and again. If you know what you're doing, you can make it good. With that said, just this line by itself doesn't tell me much, doesn't excite me. I would assume she's getting fired, but I would have to read next to be able to figure that out. So let me read the next few lines. I look around at the desks beside me and then back at Frankie, trying to confirm to whom exactly she's talking. I point to myself. Do you mean me? Frankie has very little patience. Yes, Monique, you. That's why I said, Monique, can you come into my office? Again, Again, we still don't know why, but I am a little bit more intrigued. Like, is she getting fired? This doesn't sound good. What's going on in this lady's life, right? Decent opening lines. Maybe not the most action-y lines as I'm used to in the other fantasy books, but then again, this is not a fantasy book, so I get it. Different book, different genre, different tone. Did I love this book? Yes. Do I recommend it? Yes. So if you're into that kind of stuff, read it. It's good. All right, next we have a really popular one that has been all over the internet, all over Instagram, TikTok. You'll see it everywhere. And that's A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. You've probably seen this. It's everywhere. I actually really like this series. I remember really liking the opening line, or at least the opening page. So let's see. The forest had become a labyrinth of snow and ice. Okay, so I'm intrigued by the word labyrinth, and it does set the setting, but by itself, I don't know if that line intrigues me enough, but I'm willing to keep reading. So let's read a little bit more. I'd been monitoring the parameters of the thicket for an hour, and my vantage point in the crook of a tree branch had turned useless. The gusting wind blew thick flurries to sweep away my tracks, but buried along with them any signs of potential quarry. Hunger had brought me farther from home than I usually risked, but winter was the hard time. Yes, I'm definitely intrigued by that. You know, she's hungry, she's got to hunt, she's going further and further into the forest. Clearly there's something at stake here. She's cold, she's vulnerable, but she's at the same time hunting, so she's strong. It's like a weird combination, but I love that. It shows her personality well. It hooks you, so it does a good job. All right, so next I want to read the opening line of Angelfall by Suzanne E. And this is one of my all-time favorite books. I just love the pacing of the story. It's so fast-paced, full of adventure, full of action. It's the way I love stories to be. It's the way I enjoy writing stories as well. I like things to be just constantly happening. And this does that. This does that really well. Every few years I go back and I read this series, this trilogy, and it's always as good as I remember. So let's read the opening line. Ironically, since the attacks, the sunsets have been glorious. I just love this one. All right, even though it's describing the weather, or I guess like the sunset, it's still setting the scene. And plus, you know, you're just kind of wondering what attacks, what's going on, what attacks. I don't usually like when opening lines start by talking about like the weather. Oh, it's cold outside, or it's hot, or on a sunny day, or on a cold winter night. Like, you know, it feels kind of cliche, but here it just works. It works because one, she's not really describing the weather. She's pointing out that even though there are attacks, the sunset is beautiful, and it's kind of like a contradictory thing. And I don't know, I'm just very intrigued by this. Mainly the part about the attacks. I want to know what kind of attacks. Obviously, as you continue reading, you find out it's angels and demons and that kind of thing. But yeah, that opening line just always hooks me. I just love this book. 100% recommend this one. All right, and the last book I want to look at is Jane Austen's Mansfield Park. This one isn't as popular as Pride and Prejudice, but I really enjoyed this book, and I love all of Jane Austen's books, at least the ones that I have read. I've read a couple. Let's find out what I think of the opening line. Also, just as a side note, I know a lot of people usually will quote the opening lines of Jane Austen novels as like high standard, beautiful, great hooks. I personally don't find her opening lines to be like wow, but I do enjoy her books, so I kind of ignore the opening lines because I know I'll enjoy the rest of the story. But with that said, just keep that in mind that I am a little biased about her opening lines. All right, here it is. About 30 years ago, Miss Maria Ward of Huntington, with only £7,000, had the good luck to captivate Sir Thomas Bertram of Mansfield Park in the county of Northampton, and to be thereby raised to the rank of a baronet's lady, with all the comforts and consequences of a handsome house and large income. So it's a wordy first line. Again, is this intriguing to me? No. Does it set the scene, or at least like the tone of the story? Yes, it's talking about income, it's talking about love, it's talking about social standing and status. So yeah, it does tell me a bit about the story, and I do, again, really enjoy Jane Austen novels and their premise and all of that, and like the humor behind them. They make fun of like how society is and like point at society's flaws. So I do enjoy that. So based on that, yes, it does intrigue me, but is it like the most exciting of a line? I don't know. I wouldn't say so. Again, it just feels like if I were to write nowadays, oh, my character married somebody rich and now they're rich. That's the equivalent of me writing that. It's not like the greatest line, in my opinion. A lot of people love her opening lines. They think they're great. I really don't, but I do like the rest of the story. I think her stories are fantastic. So yeah. That's what I think. Those are some of the popular books that I have on my bookshelf and what I think of their opening lines. Let me know in the comments if you agree or disagree with me about any of the opening lines that I mentioned today. And yeah, thank you for joining me for this video, especially since it's my birthday week and this is my way of celebrating my birthday, because I think opening lines are fun and I hope you do too. And of course, if you're new to my channel, be sure to subscribe, because I put out writing advice videos every other Wednesday that will help you take your story to the next level. Also, be sure to follow me on social media to see what I'm up to from day to day and to chat with me. And before we go, I just want to give a quick shout out to Sarah Frayne from my shout outs here over on Patreon, as well as all my amazing patrons. Thank you all so much for your support. I really appreciate you. And remember, Nour for president.